Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. It is still Friday. Yes, I know the last episode went almost an hour. Yeah, went over an hour and a half, but we are back. I'm still here at Victory Baptist Church located in Ovalo, Texas. It is Friday, November the 6th, 2020. It is currently 11:13 a.m. Central Time. And I'm debating with myself if it was smart to hit the go live button. I don't know if I'm actually ready to go live with this idea, but I'm going to do so. So I need to throw out a warning here, right? What you're about to hear is me just taking an idea that I haven't really completely fleshed out. I haven't really worked out all the details. And I want to just kind of put it out there before you, the listening audience, so that we can kind of work on it together, all right? Because I have kind of this interpretive idea related to Proverbs chapter 5. And I'm not so sure that I'm right. At the same time, I'm not so sure that I am wrong. And I've been thinking about this for months. Let me remind you a little bit. If you remember, during the summer, I really wanted everyone to focus on two things during the summer of 2020. I wanted everyone to focus on the book of Proverbs. I wanted everyone to read it and reread it and read it and read it. And the reason I wanted everyone to do so is because I have stated, and I will say it again, that what the church needs right now are people filled with biblical and spiritual wisdom. We need people with a heavenly wisdom, a godly wisdom. We need spiritual wisdom. We do not need an earthly wisdom, a devilish wisdom, a fleshly wisdom. We do not need that. We need a godly, spiritual, biblical wisdom more so than ever because the world seems to be descending further and further into chaos. And there is darkness and there is confusion. And the church seems to be wanting to utilize earthly wisdom instead of biblical wisdom. So what better way to try to help Christians and say, hey, read the book of Proverbs this summer. Meditate on the book of Proverbs. Read it and read it and read it. And I did a number of sermons and messages on the book of Proverbs. We did an overview of the book of Proverbs. We looked at Proverbs chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and chapter 4. And we got up to chapter 5, and by that point, the summer was over. And of course, other things kind of took my focus away, which is my own fault, but took my focus away. And so we haven't advanced that. The other thing I wanted everyone to focus on was not only the book of Proverbs, but the book, The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. I tried to tell everyone to get a copy, and I've been working on that on a pretty regular and consistent basis. In fact, I just picked up one of my copies of The Imitation of Christ, and I'd walked to the pulpit where it's sitting, where it's laying there on the pulpit, and almost went over and picked up the copy and came back to the microphone to go live with the next chapter in The Imitation of Christ. But as I was picking it up, I looked down and there was a Bible sitting there on the pulpit, and it was open to the book of Proverbs. And I'm like, you know what? We've got to get back to Proverbs. And I know what I need to do. I need to throw out this idea that I have, this theory that I have. But I don't know if I should do it now or if I should wait. But if I wait, I don't know I'm afraid I'm not going to get to it. And I think that this will be, very interesting. And I hope that people will struggle with me, about this idea, that they'll struggle and they'll try to figure it out. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be looking at Proverbs chapter 5. But before we open up the text, before we get there, I need to remind you of something that I identified in our overview of the book of Proverbs. And here's the idea. And I not only is this an idea, this is a fact. In the book of Proverbs, there are a number of passages, a number of sections in Proverbs where that the author of Proverbs uses a woman. In other words, it takes a woman and personifies this woman as, let's say, wisdom. It personifies wisdom as a woman. Right? Here's the wisdom, and wisdom is personified, spoken of as a woman. And when I realized that Proverbs does this a number of times, I started thinking, okay, how should this possibly impact my understanding of the whole book of Proverbs whenever it speaks of a woman, whenever it speaks about a woman? Because Proverbs does this personification. And what I mean by that, it takes a concept, say wisdom, and personifies it as a person. You could argue that in many cases in Proverbs, it's written to sound like a father speaking to a son. But is it a father speaking to a son, or is it using the personification of wisdom as a man? It personifies wisdom as a woman, or it personifies wisdom as a mother, as a woman. It personifies wisdom possibly as a father. Is that a possibility? If so, that kind of changes a little bit of how we interpret it. We interpret these passages as not necessarily a parent speaking to a child. It's wisdom speaking to all of us who are children. We're all children and we need wisdom. And wisdom is being personified as a parent, as a male or a female, as a woman, as a mother. And I think this concept is very interesting, especially how it could possibly change our interpretation of the godly woman. Is it Proverbs 31 that so many sermons have been preached on? Let me verify it right quick. I'm almost 100% sure that I'm right, but I don't want to be wrong and then later have to go back and delete this recording. Yeah, Proverbs chapter 31. Proverbs chapter 31, I think verse 10. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that she shall not have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. And it talks about this godly woman. Now, is it possible that the godly woman there is really the personification of wisdom? That wisdom, that if we find wisdom, then we can put our trust in it. Wisdom does all of these things. And we have to understand, what is this teaching us about wisdom? Not what is it teaching us necessarily about a godly woman. What is it teaching us about wisdom? Now, I have not gotten yet to Proverbs 31 to carry that idea out. I haven't gotten there. Because before we can get to Proverbs 31, we come to Proverbs 5, where another woman is spoken of. Another kind of woman, a woman very different than the Proverbs 31 woman. And so I'm like, wait a minute, is it possible that the woman in Proverbs 5 is another personification of something? It's not just saying, here's an actual physical woman. It's saying that this woman is a personification of a different concept. Let me just show you what I mean by here and try to explain all of this, all right? Because I think it's very important. Go to Proverbs chapter 1. Go to Proverbs chapter 1. Let me build my case a little bit here. And again, I'm still working this out, so don't expect every T to be crossed and every I to be dotted and that this all comes across perfectly. This is just in real time, me trying to present an idea. And it would be like if we were all sitting here at the church on this Friday afternoon, just having Bible studies, and I'm like, hey, I got a concept, and I would just throw it out there. I like that way of doing things, that, hey, you're a part of this kind of Theology Central family, and I'm just throwing this idea out there, and hopefully we can spark a good conversation. But first, let me prove that wisdom is personified as a woman. All right, go to Proverbs chapter 1. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 20. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 20. And this happens early on. This happens early on in the book. So I think this begins to set up an interpretive principle that maybe can be applicable to the rest of the book. All right, here's Proverbs chapter 1. Look at verse 20. Wisdom crieth without. She uttereth her voices in the streets. So here's wisdom being personified as a woman, as a she. Wisdom, she's crying without. She uttereth her voice in the streets. It's the idea of wisdom as a woman walking the streets. She's walking the streets. And what is she doing? She's crying in the chief place of concourse, in the openings of the gates, in the city. She uttereth her words, saying, how long will you simple ones, will you love simplicity? And the scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. All right, so wisdom is a woman in this personification, this kind of allegory, illustration that's being created. And you can see her walking the streets, trying to tell people to turn back to godly wisdom. This is godly wisdom personified as a woman. It creates a very vivid word picture, an image that you can relate to. All right, now, but that's not the only place. And that goes from Proverbs chapter 1, just so that you want to know, verse 20 all the way to verse 33. All right, all the way down to verse 33. Well, you can just look at it for yourself. I mean, we've already spent a lot of time studying it, so I'm not going to go back and review everything. But this is not the only place it happens. Go to Proverbs chapter 8. Proverbs chapter 8, verse 1. Proverbs chapter 8, verse 1, we read this. Doth not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? There it goes, back to a personification of a woman. She, right, wisdom, understanding, she standeth in the top of high places, by the way, in the place of the path. She crieth at the gate, at the entry of the city, at the coming in at the doors. Unto you, O man, I call. My voice is to the sons of men. O ye simple, understand wisdom, and you fools, be ye of an understanding heart. And it personifies wisdom as a woman all the way through chapter 8, all the way into chapter 9, all the way down to chapter 9, I think verse 12. So over a chapter and a part of another one is wisdom personified as a woman. And again, it's this idea. She's walking in the streets. She's trying to say, listen, turn back to godly wisdom. Turn back to me. So she's there speaking to people. She's in the streets. But it's godly wisdom personified as a woman. Now that cannot be denied. Proverbs does it. Now, how does that impact Proverbs 31? I don't know if I can prove my case there yet. I just think there's a possibility that what Proverbs 31 is saying, that godly woman that was, walking in the streets, that godly woman that was calling to you, if you turn to her, if you trust in her, then she, in a sense, becomes, like your spiritual wife. She becomes the godly woman that you really need in your life. And she will do this and this and this. And we have to understand how it's using it maybe in an illustrative, allegorical way. Now, I cannot prove that yet. I just think that it has to be a consideration, because it's just, Proverbs does the personification thing way a lot. And so we have to carry that idea all the way to Proverbs 31. However, whether we decide to use it in Proverbs 31 or reject the idea, we have to ask ourselves, what do we do with the woman in Proverbs chapter 5? So you got a woman in Proverbs 1, wisdom. All right, wisdom is personified as a woman. She's in chapter 1. She's in chapter 8. She goes into chapter 9. But between those two sections, another woman appears. And she appears in chapter 5. Who is this woman? Is it talking about just an actual physical woman, or is it using the personification again, this concept? Let's look at it. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 5. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 5. And I don't know about your Bible, but my Bible, for a chapter heading, it has this: the lips of a strange woman. So we have a woman here. Now we've got a woman in Proverbs 1. That's wisdom personified as a woman. We have a woman in chapter 8 and parts of chapter 9. That's a woman personified. It's wisdom personified as a woman. So who is the strange woman in chapter 5? Well, let's consider this. Proverbs chapter 5, verse 1. First, we have, my son, attend unto my wisdom and bow thine ear to my understanding. Now here we have almost wisdom personified as a father. The father is speaking to the son. Right? Speaking to us. It's like a parental authority. Wisdom is like the parent. It's the authority speaking to us as children. And it's telling us, attend unto my wisdom and bow thine ears to my understanding. Hey, listen to my wisdom. Submit to my wisdom. Submit to my understanding. That thou mayest regard discretion, and that thy lips may keep knowledge. The reason you want to listen to me, and this is almost wisdom personified again as a parent, the reason you want to listen to me is that you can have discretion and that you may be able to keep knowledge. Now, why do you need this discretion? Why do you need to keep knowledge? Because there is a woman out there. Just like there's the woman, godly wisdom, is out in the streets, there's another woman out in the streets. And this is the strange woman. Look what it says about her. Proverbs 5:3. For the lips of a strange woman drop as an honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil. So here's another woman out here. Now, you can go with that. This is just speaking of a physical woman, of a certain type of a physical woman. But to me, if we personify this, this makes some sense. There's that godly woman, wisdom personified, right? She's out there in the streets, but there's another woman out there. And she's coming along, and her speech is like the honeycomb. Her mouth is smoother than oil. She's smooth talking. She's very manipulative. She's very influential in how she speaks. There's almost a seductiveness to her words, and you're drawn to it. You're drawn to now there's that other woman out there crying, but you're not listening to her because this strange woman, she has your attention. See that the other woman, she cries out in the streets. It doesn't sound like her words are very seductive or attractive. It seems like she's just out there crying out. This woman seems to be more subtle. Look at verse 4. But her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. So she appears to be something attractive and seductive, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold on hell. Lest thou shouldest ponder the paths of life, her ways are movable, that thou canst not know them. Right? So there's giving this, here's this woman out there you've got to be careful of. Her ways, you can't even know her ways because they're movable. They're always changing, right? Her steps her feet go down to death and her steps take hold on hell. She's going to lead you straight to hell. She's going to lead you to destruction. And you can't even really know what she's doing. She's manipulative. She's seductive. She's subtle. Verse 7. Hear me now, therefore, O ye children, and depart not from the words of my mouth. Remove thy way far from her, and come not nigh unto the door of her house. Don't go to her house. Don't get near her. Stay away from her. There's that other woman in the streets crying out. Go to her, not to this woman. Verse 9, lest thou give thine honor unto others and thy years unto the cruel, lest strangers be filled with thy wealth and thy labors be in the house of a stranger. Okay. And you can, and it kind of goes on. Basically what's going to happen if you go down to her house, you're going to end up losing everything. You're going to end up being destroyed. Now, what a lot of people do with this, a lot of preachers do this, is they say this is the adulterous woman. Hey, there's always that woman or that man out there who's going to try to get you to break your marriage vows. They're going to try to seduce you. They're going to go, even though they know you're married, they're going to play, and you need to be aware of the adulteress, of the seductor. You need to be aware of that. And I'm not denying there may be some application there, but is it possible that what this is doing, is it possible that this is contrasting that wisdom personified as a woman who was in the streets? We see her in the streets in chapter 1. We see her in the streets in chapter 8. She's out there. She's crying for you to come to her. She's saying, please heed me. Come, turn. Come listen to my warnings. Listen to my rebuke. Listen to my reproof. But there's this other woman saying, no. Come here. Right here. And she says the right words in the right way, with the right tone, and you become seduced by it. And the next thing you say, in a sense, you give yourself to her. You give yourself. And this other woman, this strange woman, is a false wisdom. It's an earthly, sensual, devilish wisdom that we are warned about in the book of James. We are told to stay away from this wisdom. We're told to stay away from it. And here's what happens. When we turn to that earthly, fleshly, devilish wisdom, when we turn to it, we become a friend of the wisdom of the world. Guess what we become? We become adulterers and adulteresses. We become guilty of a spiritual adultery. You don't believe me? Go to the book of James. Go to the book of James. Go to the book of James. I think we're onto something here. I think we really are onto a very important principle here. Go to the book of James. Go to chapter 4. All right? Go to James chapter 4. All right? James chapter 4. Look at verse 4. James chapter 4, verse 4. James chapter 4, verse 4. Ye adulterers and adulteresses. Oh man, he's referring to people as an adulterer and adulteress. What did they do? Did they have some physical relationship with someone other than their spouse? What kind of adultery is he referring to? No, he's not referring to that kind of adultery. Look, James 4:4, you adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. This is a spiritual adultery. When we become, look, the world system, the world ideas, the world, the wisdom of this world, it's a strange woman and it's seductive. And it's like, come here. Yeah, come here. But they lead you to death. It will lead you to hell. It will destroy you. I think the strange woman is really a personification of an ungodly wisdom, a worldly wisdom, and that we are guilty of spiritual adultery in all kinds of different ways. Remember in Ezekiel, I believe 16, you can look at it. I believe it's Ezekiel 16. Let me verify this. I believe it's Ezekiel 16. I wrote it down. Yes, Ezekiel 16. You can read the whole chapter. The Jerusalem, Israel, is condemned for their spiritual adultery. They have made themselves the harlot. They have made themselves, basically, I'm just going to be blunt, they've made themselves a whore. They're guilty of whoredoms. The King James is very blunt. And how did they do so? Because they gave themselves to idolatry and to false gods and to false ways. They became a friend of the world. They became lovers with idolatry, false religion, the world system, and God condemns them as adulterers and adulteresses. Look, the church does condemn adultery, and it's right, and it's completely perfectly biblical to condemn adultery as being wrong, and it has to be confronted. I'm not in any way dismissing that. I'm just saying that while we go after people who've committed physical adultery, sometimes we overlook everyone sitting in the church who have, they have laid down with another lover. They have given themselves to another lover, and it is the wisdom of this world. It is idolatry. It is ungodliness. They have become a friend with the world. Becoming a friend of the world makes you an adulterer. And that adultery doesn't get much headlines in the church. No, look, that person committed, physical adultery with someone. That's it. Crucify them. All right. That person committed, emotional adultery. They became too close to someone's. That person committed mental adultery because they were looking at pornography or whatever. So we say they've committed adultery. They must be dealt with. While and a lot of the people throwing the rocks at the ones who've committed some kind of adultery, and that way, they're guilty of a different kind of adultery, a spiritual adultery. They've laid down with multiple lovers. They're friends with the world. They've committed adultery on a regular and consistent basis, but no one condemns it. No one looks at it. So I can see why when people go to Proverbs 5, they're like, here's the strange woman. This is the woman out there who's going to try to get you to, commit, adultery with her, avoid her. And I'm not saying that there's not an application there. I'm not. I just think it's very interesting that Proverbs 1, wisdom is personified as a woman. Proverbs 8 and 9, wisdom is personified as a woman. Where is the woman? Out in the streets. Out in the streets. And then all of a sudden in Proverbs 5, hey, be careful of that woman. Be careful her speech. Be careful of her speech. Her she's going to lead you down to death. She's going to lead you to hell. Be careful. Don't go to her house. Don't follow her. Don't listen to her, because it's only going to destroy you. Don't do it. I think the contrast is very interesting. Now, you may disagree with my interpretation here, and I'm not saying. Listen, I am not being dogmatic in any way, shape, or form. I am still trying to process this. I just want to throw this out there to you because I think it's interesting. This personification, I think, really should cause us to stop and think about how the Proverbs are written. Right? Sometimes we just that's just a father speaking to his son. Or is that wisdom being personified as a parent speaking to all of us? Is that wisdom personified as a woman, personified as a mother? Is this a fleshly, ungodly wisdom personified as a woman? I think that there is something to what I am suggesting, and I would challenge you to really, 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 really think about it. All right. So I'm not going to go any further, but I want you to really look at Proverbs 5 and really think about what's happening there and see if you put it this way. Even if you think the primary interpretation is that this is a physical woman and this is a warning about going with a strange woman and committing physical adultery, even if you think that that is the primary interpretation, I don't think you can deny that wisdom that the book of James, give me 1 second. Let me find it here really quick. Not only James 4:4, but there's another part of James I want you to consider. Give me 1 second. Book of James. Give me 1 second. I just got to find it really quick. Give me 1 second. I'm looking. Give me 1 second. Hang on. I know what I'll do. I'll just look it up. I'll look it up this way. It'll be faster. Give me 1 second. I should know it because it was one of our memory verses, and I can quote the verse. I just don't know. I think it's James chapter 3. Yeah, James chapter 3. Maybe that's the problem. That's why I couldn't find it. I wasn't in the book of James. I was in Peter, and I was like, this is making no sense. Now, here it is. Yeah, now I would have been able to find it if I would have been in the right book. I was looking at the scriptures. I'm like, this does not make any sense. So I was looking in the right chapter, but I could not find it. Here's what I want you to remember. James chapter 3, all right? James chapter 3, verse 13. James chapter 3, verse 13. Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter envying and strife in your hearts, glory not and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, and devilish. There is an earthly, sensual, devilish wisdom. And I think that's the strange woman. That's the strange woman. And to become friends with her, to become friends with the world, which is worldly wisdom, the wisdom that comes from the world, it does not come from God. It is earthly, sensual, and devilish. That's the wisdom of the world. And when you become friends with the world, you become friends with this wisdom, you become a friend with this strange woman, you become an adulterer, you become an adulteress, and you commit spiritual adultery. That, I think, is, if we put all of that together, I think that's a possible interpretation of what's going on in Proverbs 5. You can continue, read Proverbs 5, the whole chapter. Give me your thoughts. Give me your interpretation. Would love to hear from you. I think we're on to something. I cannot be dogmatic, but I think we're on to something. And I think we should really, really, really look into it and see what else we can discover about it. All right, I'm going to stop right there. It's getting close to noon. I'm once again hungry. Yes, I'm hungry. Now, the reason I always say that is because even though I'm not a big fan of food, what frustrates me is if I haven't eaten in a long time and then I'm here recording, my stomach starts growling. And I'm always afraid the microphone's going to pick it up. And if the microphone picks it up, that's not going to be very professional. So then I'm like, okay, I want to keep recording. I want to keep doing live broadcasts, but I have to go eat so that I can get rid of that growling. I should bring food with me is what I should do, but I always forget. Sometimes I bring snacks, but then at that point I get tired of the snacks and I want actual food. So those are the problems of a podcaster. Yeah. When you want to keep talking, but your stomach says, no, you need to eat. That's the problem. I wish the microphone could only pick up my voice, and that's it. Could not pick up any other sounds, but it picks up when I'm grabbing a water bottle, it picks up that. When I'm moving books, it picks up that. When I'm turning pages, like sometimes I like those sounds, and I will literally bring the page to the microphone because I think it just adds something to it. And there's other times it picks up sounds, and I'll listen. I'm like, what was that? And so, and especially if I hear my stomach growling, that's not very professional. So, but you know what? I've always tried to say that we should eat spiritually before we eat physically. So I have definitely eaten spiritually today, right? We've talked about the doctrine of election. We've talked about Proverbs 5. We've spent some time partaking of God's word and trying to understand it and trying to grow in our understanding of it. So we've definitely done that. So now I need some physical food. So it's always important to eat spiritually first. And I think we've accomplished that today. All right, I'll stop right there. Look forward to your email. Oh, let me check my email really quick. Let me check my email. I need to give you one last update really quick on something that's becoming beyond irritating. Let me just see here, because I don't want to say something that I'm going to regret. Well, no, I'm getting irritated. Okay. If you remember yesterday at 5:53 a.m., I received an email from Edify, right? And Edify, remember, is the Christian podcasting app, right? 2.5 million Christian podcast, or whatever the number they claim, right? And I've been trying to get on Edify forever. We are on every podcasting app on planet Earth. We're available everywhere: SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, Deezer, you name it. I mean, we're Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spreaker. We're I could go from Overcast. I could go through all the podcast apps. We're on all of them. Amazon Music. We're everywhere. But the one place we cannot seem to get our podcast on is the Edify app, and I don't understand why. I've emailed and I emailed and emailed, and I've listened to all kinds of podcasts on the Edify app, and I'm like, we in many cases we produce better quality, at least equal quality. We're theologically right there in line with historical biblical Christianity, so I don't understand what the issue is. But we can't get on Edify. We cannot. I keep emailing them. At 5:53 a.m. yesterday, they emailed me saying, "Hey, I'm sorry. It's been a crazy week. I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to listen and get back to you ASAP." That was 5:53 a.m. yesterday. Now it's almost noon today. So that's over 24 hours and nothing, not a word. I've sent 3 emails saying, "Can I get an update? Can I get an update? Can I get no reply?" I don't know what, I didn't even know there was this extensive review process for Edify. I don't know what we have to agree. They didn't say, "Do you agree to this statement of faith?" They won't respond. It's the most maddening thing I have ever seen. Why can't I get on a Christian podcast app? Well, why? What is the deal? Look, if they don't want me there, just say that we don't want you and give me at least some kind of justification. Because I guarantee you, whatever they claim about me, look at all the current controversy going on with Ravi Zacharias and all the accusations and the investigation. His podcast is on the Edify app. Okay, he's been accused of all kinds of things, right? So if he can be on there, then what's the issue? I don't get it. So it's just bizarre. I don't understand. I don't know what we have to do. I don't know. Or do they want money? I don't know. But okay, yeah, I just refreshed again. Still nothing. So whenever we get on the Edify app, I will let you know, because I think there's opportunity there. I really do think there's opportunity there for us. But as of right now, they don't want anything to do with us. They won't even reply to my emails. So I was so grateful that they finally replied. I am so grateful. But if you count the number of messages I've sent, I wrote a review on Apple Podcasts, on the Apple App Store. I wrote a review saying this is a great concept, but they won't contact me. Please contact me. I've sent probably 20 messages on their website saying, "Hey, I want to get. How do we get our podcast on your app? Let us know." It took, I think, 19. After 19 attempts, I tried one more time, and I think it was the 20th try that they finally responded. Then they responded, and they keep telling me they're going to get back to me, and it just, I don't get what's going on. I mean, look, when you're a podcaster, the last thing you want is to have an app out there, especially for people who are Christians who may say, "This is the app I'm going to use because I'm just going to listen to theological podcasts," and you not be there. That's not, and your podcast is, theological in nature. That's not helpful. That's not going to help you. So yeah, it's very frustrating, but I'm trying to remain patient, trying to remain calm. and we'll see what happens. All right? Right? I need spiritual wisdom here. I do not need I don't need the worldly, devilish, fleshly kind of sensual wisdom. I need a godly wisdom. So, all right, we'll stop right there. There we go. Email me, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Everyone have a great day. God bless.